On the left there were two formations, one of which was formed earlier in the season and one later. When I got up to the later one and stood there, I had some kind of insight that I'd been participating in making it, but certainly not now in this life. So I said, I got very angry. I almost lost my temper and shouted at the beings and said, "You keep telling me that I've taken part in making these things, but you never tell me when." 2183.
It was in the late 70s. I studied a lot of work of Wilhelm Reich and crystal grids and a lot of other stuff, and at one time in my home half a dozen books have been laying open on the floor at the right page, and I could see the interconnection between the different scientific stuff, and I had the question, Willy, so Wilhelm Reich, please give me a sign if I really found what was your last finding, if I really found it also. And a white ball of light was rushing through my room, through me, and you can imagine I was quite shocked. But I found out that these balls of light of 20 years ago have to do with the balls of light which are seen in the crop fields.
It looked like nothing on earth, and I said to the pilot, what a mess in the field, but I think we better fly around it just to record it. So we flew around it, and I couldn't make head or tail of it. I thought, well, this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The actual shape of the face was made up of standing clumps of wheat, but different sized standing clumps. Now, it was almost as though we'd been seeing things in the negative before. Here we were suddenly seeing something in the positive. And it was really quite extraordinary. It seemed as though each of these little bundles, the standing crop, the crop around it had been swirled quite individually. But this one is a face, and it can be nothing else but a face.
What we found when the plants were cut at about an inch above, when the combine harvester were taking the surface off and left the bones of the design, we had the construction order.
A gentleman wrote in a local newspaper that he'd flown over the field before anything was in it, apart from one outline of a square, which is where the face was, and all that was in there was just a laid down square. So with the evidence that we found on the ground, I came to the conclusion personally that a grid was laid out prior to that.
And it was.
And also that the local people said that 3 people camped in the trees at the bottom of the field for 3 days. So this is what we found out. So I'm in the opinion that it was a very clever operation.
There was another crop circle in the field which did look as though it was some sort of communication, some sort of message. It looked as though it was in hieroglyphs.
I looked at it and immediately thought, it looks like the Arecibo transmission of 1974.
In 1974, the SETI organization, which had another name at that time, and Carl Sagan and his friends had the idea to send a message into space. It's our decimal systems, this is our genetic structures, these are the main chemicals the physical body consists. This is the number of our nucleotides, and we have a genetic structure called double helix. Then it says the number of our population at that time, a depiction of a human, the size of the human, approximately 176 centimeters, a depiction of our solar system. So in fact this is Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth is enhanced because we are living there, and so on. And at the bottom it shows the transmission system which we used, or they used at that time, for sending it, and the size of the transmission system. We got a very, very interesting answer. In short, they tell us, okay, we know your decimal system. Our body chemistry is quite the same with slight differences. We also included silicon within our body chemistry. The nucleotides are somewhat different. What is of big importance, they have not a double helix, they have a triple helix. Here's a depiction of a sort of alien figure with a big head and a small body. It says 101 centimeters, and the population about 12.7 billion people. And they show a depiction of a solar system which looks somewhat like ours, but it's not really sure is it our solar system or another. And the most interesting point is their transmission system, which they show at the bottom, and they show also the size of this transmission system. In fact, these are binary numbers, but if you translate them, it says 850 meters is the width of this transmission system. The very interesting point is, this is an abstraction of the crop circle we got 1 year before in Chilbolton again, and we got it in 85 meter size. So they scaled it down 1 to 10, and 1 year before the answer they told us about their transmission system, which we could only decode 1 year later. the code of Chilbolton and the face of Chilbolton, by chance I found out have totally the same square meter area.
So perhaps because there was a few days in between, perhaps it was some kind of a comment or an addition by some other source.
Absolutely. It could be a response to the original one. Indeed, yes, indeed. The Arecibo message could mean nothing else but an Arecibo message or a response to the Arecibo message. Again, it couldn't be likened to anything else.
And in this crop circle, this code describes space people. There's a different kind of DNA, it says, in the code for the space beings and us. It's very close to ours, but it's different. And it has an extra part in it, which is called silicon, which is what you make crystals out of, like in our watches and computers. If this is true, then these beings would be much more complicated than us, could do many more things, especially mentally. So I thought, is there some way to check if this is true?
I think they found a way to modify their genetic system and to solve the trouble with the so-called high-tech technology which we have, and they have not to carry a laptop or anything, and they only have to use their silicon computer inside their genes.
Then I found a professor, Corrado Malanga, from one of the universities in Italy, who's a chemistry professor in biological chemistry, organic chemistry. And he was very interested by this formation, and with some of his top people, they had some very complicated computers. They put the computers together with all the information from that crop circle about the chemistry and the DNA and how it's put together and all that. And they ran these 3 computers that were together, and it took the computers 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, they came out with a model of how that DNA could, in practice, be. And that DNA, it turns out, actually could work. Not having the knowledge, how can they make the crop circle with that content? The crop circle itself can be pushed down, the crop can be pushed down, there's no problem. But the thing that it says was not known beforehand.
The formation that I saw done at Cheryl, the group gained 45 minutes of time. They actually checked their watches. It was 2:45. The hands are just opposite each other. There was a time check. Everyone had their watches up. I didn't check my watch. But the next time they checked it, it was 45 minutes earlier.
And they get the feeling like they've been there before. Like what they call it, like deja vu, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they've been there before.
And I asked for a time check, and I'm getting like 3 o'clock, 5 to 3, okay, cool. And then I look up, and the redness across the horizon is gone, and there are clouds overhead. And I go, whoa, hang on, that was just red, and there's clouds overhead. It's just changed, it's just like immediately, bang, everything's just changed. You know, in the morning we finish, and our clocks are still synchronized to everybody else's.
Yes, that's what I meant.
But we got an extra hour to complete the circle.
Wow.
And the problem with time traveling is that it creates some paradoxes. The typical classical paradox is that consider a time traveler travels into the past, and then for some reason or another decides to murder his parents or one of his parents. Which would lead into a situation where this time traveler couldn't be born at all, so he wouldn't be able to invent a time machine, and he wouldn't go into the past, so he wouldn't kill his parents, so he wouldn't be able to create the time traveling device after all. So it creates an infinite loop of choices, which doesn't make any sense, at least in our conventional way of thinking.
To me, time doesn't exist, you see. I see it as the past, the present and the future. I find that quite often I go into the past. I go into the past quite naturally, and the whole surrounding to me seems perfectly normal and natural. It's only when I've later described it to somebody, they said, well, that doesn't exist, that only existed 100 years ago. that driveway was there 100 years ago, or that house was there 100 years ago.
People have just, when they have seen UFOs, after that they have realized that they have lost 1 or 2 hours, and in hypnosis it has been possible to get those hours back so that people have remembered what has happened. Some people have been abducted just not only for 20 minutes but just for 1 second, and they have felt many interesting adventures, but when they have came back in our life, it has been just 1 second.
These paradoxes can be solved with different kind of solutions. One is that instead of just having one space-time continuum, we can have several parallel realities with their unique futures and pasts.
And they get the feeling like they've been there before. What do they call that? Like deja vu, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they've been there before, but they don't remember anything about it. But they seem somewhere in their consciousness that they've seen this particular thing similar to what I did in '85. And that's a nice thing that other people experience that as well.
And I was inspecting it and meditating, and then I decided to take pictures of the swirls, which were all different. I liked the pattern of the swirls, but I ran out of film and I had to go back to the car. I proceeded, I told my friend who was with me, I'll go back to the car. I walked down the tram line, we came in, and the tram line...
Tractor line.
Disappeared. The tractor line
Disappeared,
and the grass was much taller, and the air got thicker.
Stories of watches that have gone in and they leave one in the car, calibrated, expensive watches, and when they get out they're different. I've heard stories of compasses spinning around in the circles, batteries failing, which I've seen myself. I mean, I think it's possible, let me say that.
People were coming out of a crop circle once, had seen their friends just leave the edge of the crop circle and go over a dip, and then immediately appear at the end of the field, bang, and they were like, well, that's amazing, you know. So and they saw another person coming down and then appear at the end of the field.
And there were some bushes in front of me, and beyond the bushes was a fire with 2 short people, and a chicken was there and a dog, and they were talking in what seemed to be Chaucerian English.
Old English.
Old English, and there were little cottages, huts, much smaller than the thatched cottages we see, very small. And I thought, oh my God, I've gone through a time portal. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. I can make contact with beings from the past.
It's touching us now, but maybe it's been touching people for thousands of years. My argument is that what we're actually tapping into here is something that maybe we forgot about. Maybe Stonehenge and Avebury and all these places around here, they're on energy centres, and that if you make magical symbols like this, that it engages this energy centre and focuses it in such a way that people get strange experiences that are real, it alters reality, and that this is maybe a way of communicating backwards and forwards through time.
I'm considering them. If I barge out of the tree, no matter how gently, I'm very tall, I have very foreign-looking clothing on, to them. The dog may have a reaction, and I might get a pitchfork in my chest, because the prevailing attitude might be, whoa, from the devil.
And I could see a faint pattern somewhere in the distance, and it was on a slope, on a hill slope, and it was somehow covered in mist so that I couldn't perfectly make out the shape. But as I was watching it, there was a voice or a message inside my head that said to me that take a good look at this shape and memorize it, because this crop circle may appear in England very soon.
And I said to my friend, my God, I have just gone through this time portal. There's a doorway here. You got to come with me, because if I am abused by the denizens of the past, then you got to come and save me, because I want to go and make this contact.
Yeah.
He said, what's with you? You know? I said, look, I've been gone for an hour, and an hour really, and I'm completely tired. I'm sweating, and he said, Ron, you've only been gone 2 minutes. What's going on?
There was a ring, and inside the ring there were something that I saw as droplets attached to the ring, pointing towards the center of the formation. And I assumed there were 6 of them, but when I counted them one by one, to my surprise there were 7. And I recounted twice, and each time I got the number 7. And then inside the droplets in the center of the shape, there was something that looked like as it wasn't formed yet. And then I saw there was a new crop circle in Herne, in South England, near an airport. And this shape, I didn't recognize it at first, but when I started counting the elements, there were these semicircles attached into this ring. And I thought initially that it was 6-folded geometry. And I started counting, and to my surprise there were 7. And then I instantly remembered the green. And when I looked at this formation again, I became quite certain that this was the crop circle that was kind of announced to me in the dream. And it had appeared on the 19th of May, so it was just 3 days after I had the dream. Considering the similarities and comparing this crop circle in my dream to any other crop circle that had appeared on any other year before 2001, this one was certainly the most similar to the one that I dreamt of.
We're looking at something like, 5 point something other billion people who really have one little interest, perhaps a flimsy interest, but certainly haven't a sufficient motivation to do anything about it. In other words, it's something that just is on the landscape of their day. What separates that group, which is the majority, to those that put themselves out and are dedicated, are fired up to do what we are doing? The question is, what makes that difference? Why is it that a switch is thrown in these individuals compared to the others? Well, there is a point of view that says that this group of individuals, born to carry out a particular function, are indeed, their souls are committed from the future to adjust the now for the future. You could say that if you remotely view all aspects of life as they exist at this very moment, and this is done, it's been done by the CIA several times, and I'm sure other intelligence agencies, they bring together remote viewers, people that have this ability to remotely view distant places and distant times. And if everything exists in the future without change or modification, based upon what is happening today, everything that exists, there will not be a future. And the remote viewers have already seen that day. They have gone forward and they say, at this particular place, there is no future.
But it is possible in the future human beings manage to transfer themselves into plasma balls, losing or leaving behind their physical body and traveling into the past to make crop circles. And why? Perhaps to cause some changes in our consciousness in a very subtle way that doesn't force us to change our views or force us to take certain actions, but very gently through these hypnotic geometric shapes invite us to change our way of thinking, and which might be essential to turn our history and to even save our planet from destruction.
And is it toward 2012?
It's in that period.
Yeah.
It's in that period where we say, well, all the doors close there because the ecosystem can't support it.
Mm.
Right, but the theory goes that there is a group of individuals, probably in the thousands, that are here today, that are working on certain elements of life, that they are trying in their own way, and even not even consciously aware of it, that are trying to influence a larger group of individuals to change the course of the future. So you change the course of the future by changing what we do, the way we think. And what we think that turns into actions is what changes our future. And people from the future are here now trying to adjust that trend.
One of the most famous crop circles of all times was the Julia Set crop circle in 1996. And it was also the crop circle that got me started. There was a pilot flying some tourists around the Stonehenge megalith formation, which is positioned next to the field where this Julia Set formation was. And the passengers, nor the pilot of the plane, saw the crop circle, which seems impossible because it was so extremely visible from the air. Also, the crop circle was visible from the road, and the road running next to the Stonehenge stones has quite a lot of traffic in the afternoon. My friend in Sweden, who is also interested in crop circles, personally interviewed a safety guard that was guarding the Stonehenge area that day when this crop circle appeared, and this guard swore that the crop circle was not there in the morning. If we play with the idea that anyhow that the word from these people who claim to have made this formation, and it might be possible to create with sufficient time, then what should have happened was that these people somehow, while they were making the crop circle during the night, were taken to a parallel reality and taking back after they had finished the crop circle, and in our reality the crop circle was not visible, and then it was just somehow revealed in the afternoon when nobody was watching. A well-known Finnish UFO researcher, Tapani Koivula, who was presenting this very big book that was about this tall and this wide, and the book cover was there was an image that was made of horizontal lines, and he said that this book contained a message that comes from outer space. And he said that the message was partly decoded, that it was encrypted. Then he also said that the message is about the new sun. And in his place came a woman, an unknown woman to me, and she said then that what she's about to tell comes from the Mayans, or at least is related to the Mayan Indians. And then she disappeared, and in her place appeared this huge snake, a serpent that had black and yellow stripes, and the serpent was several meters long, and it was a really frightening sight. The serpent had a very big head with a very big reptile eyes, and it really looked threatening.
This appeared not too far away from the original one, probably about 5 or 6 miles away. Also in the vicinity of a radio transmitter, which was just off the edge of the field.
Again, when I flew over it, again, you couldn't see a face in it.
I couldn't immediately see that it'd been smashed down with planks, whatever. It did have a different feel to it. I thought the lay was very impressive. I thought the design was extraordinary.
He or it, whatever, coiled around me as a spiral or like a kind of a screw, and went through me. And when the snake did this, I felt this tremendous feeling of being energized. It was the next day that I received an email message that told me about the Craftwood Formation and suggested that I take a look at it. The main shape, the face part, was made of horizontal lines like the cover of the book, and the proportions of the crop circle were the same as the proportions of the book.
The first thing that intrigued me was this particular disc, which looks like it has some sort of code within it. And when I zoomed it up on the computer, you actually find that from the centre it does actually spiral out. So instead of being consecutive rings of dots, it's actually one long string, as it were, coming out with like little beads on it as it spirals round.
And when you consider it was a wheat field, which is yellowish in colour, and the shape comes out as the contrast between the yellow crop and the darker crop that is standing up. It is like a black and yellow striped serpent that is coiled as a spiral.
The lay in the face was totally different to the lay in the disc. Now, the lay in the disc, again, was remarkable. Looking from the physical level, I've decided that it would be almost impossible for anybody to have constructed it on the ground.
8 bits, as it were, indicated to me a byte in computer code. So you can then break it down into chunks of 8 and decode it. And what happens is the way computers transmit data, in order to represent sort of human character sets for the alphabet, we use a thing known as ASCII. And it's this particular code, so it represents each A, B, C, D will represent a particular ASCII code. So for instance, if you wanted to represent a capital A, it gives an ASCII code of 65. And 65, when translated into binary, you get the little dots and zeros.
Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. In Mayan astrology, like in the Western astrology that is known widely in the Western culture, each day has a specific energy depending on the sign of the day. And the sign for that date, when I had this dream, that was on the 19th of August, was night. The sign was night. And in this description that I had, it said, it described this sign that night is a dreamer that brings a new sun to light the way in your life's path, or something very much like that. A dreamer that brings a new sun. So I had a dream about a message which was about a new sun, and it completely matched this astrological sign for that date when I had the dream.
expensive GPS systems don't go down to an accuracy of feet or inches, and it was so precise. You've got to know exactly where, well, if we're flattening this bit, we've got to sort of widen it out a bit here and narrow it. And to do that without some sort of feedback from above or know what you're doing, and coupled with the fact it was all done in the dark, is like, you can sit there and think, wow.
If you stand in the centre and somebody has a rope and they go around the perimeter and then they do a spiral, as the rope touches the heads of the corn, the seed heads, the rope, they're very, very fragile, the seed heads at that time. They're bending over and they're very heavy and they're fragile. The rope would flick off the seed heads. So I looked absolutely extensively at the standing crop to see if any seed heads had been knocked off. No, they hadn't. I looked on the ground. No, the seed heads were all on the stalks.
It's made of lines where the thickness of the line defines the darkness of each spot. And there is a certain amount of these elements, both vertically and horizontally. And then when you count these elements, and you count the elements that are the bits in the code, there is approximately, this is a rough estimation, 5,000 elements in this specific crop formation. And that is a really impressive figure.
As you know, those formations appeared ahead of the new movie Signs from Disney movie with Mel Gibson. At that time, I was supplying, as was Busty, information to Disney for that movie. And that their suggestion was that they should mobilise teams, one from England and a number of other parts of the world too, to install certain types of patterns that related to ET, that the public would see and would be fired up with, that the media would really latch onto. And they were going to use this as a platform for the movie Signs. We were told, several researchers were told, that last year 2 faces would appear using similar construction methods to the people used to make the faces at Chibok and Crabwood. And we went to where we knew one was going to be, and indeed it was there, and in another part of the country, 2 faces, identical in one film. But those 4 faces have not been promoted.
And one element is not very big in this formation, so actually 1 minute is quite a lot of time for making this element. And when we calculate it from here, we get 10 elements in a minute. If there are 10 people, 1 element for each person. And that would give us 60 times 10 elements in an hour. And that is 600 elements in an hour. And if we have 10 hours, we would have 6,000 elements. And if it had about 5,000, so it could be done in follow this logic.
Farm Lake, when he went into it the morning, he was in very early, the morning of the 14th. There was only that little top bit completed and the disc wasn't there. When I interviewed him, he hadn't been back into the field since the first time he'd been there. So I said to him, with the farmer's permission, I said, listen, would you be kind enough to repeat exactly what you did the first morning you saw it? So he did. He walked along the top here, and he said, oh my goodness. He said the rest of the grid wasn't there.
I would think it is possible, using advanced preparations and good equipment, to make this kind of formation over 2 nights at least. The research hasn't verified that it comes from the space, but this is a bit of information that was in the dream, and the other pieces seem to be correct.
Yeah, you either come to the conclusion that it's either a very elaborate hoax and it's incredibly well done, and if it's not a hoax, then it's quite a profound message and something I think we need to take note of.
I think we should look at them as messages that have a purpose, even if they were made by people. So we should look at the crop circle as it is and the mechanism as it is. And sometimes it might turn out that the crop circle is much more meaningful than the mechanism would lead us to believe.
And assuming that any UFO technology would be sufficiently more intelligent than ours, or more accurate, or more technologically advanced, then you could probably get the precision.
It's not necessarily so that if a crop circle is made with a mechanism that is possible for people, that it is not possible for others to do.
They're working with crop circles, working with the landscape, and how the crop circles and the landscape and where we ourselves fit into it all contribute to this sort of dialogue, this energetic exchange of events. So yeah, I'm happy to say that I believe there's an alien or an otherness running alongside this. Yeah.
We are connected, and that's the thing. Wherever it is in the dimension, from the invisible to the visible, through that spectrum, is that it's in there somewhere, but that what is very clear is that what connects us all is conscious mind, and that I think it connects literally everyone.
I don't believe we are alone in this enormous universe. There are many other universes, many other solar systems. I also believe that there are parallel worlds, other dimensions, and I'm very happy with all that sort of belief.
And we have 400 witnesses. We have hundreds of hours of videotaped interviews with astronauts, cosmonauts, generals, admirals, all this, that say, look, I'm going to die in a few years. Even though I was threatened, I got to tell my story. And they tell the story. There are too many vested interests. It's not a simple thing. It's a big, big power thing going on. And it isn't our agenda. We try to push the timetable, say humanity should know. But it isn't our agenda. It's theirs.
My opinion is that there are maybe 50, maybe 100 types of aliens who have visited the Earth. If I think about those hundreds of cases, the most positive messages have been the messages which have talked about spiritual development. Human beings must develop their spiritual level to save this planet.
There are figures that are not quite solid, and they come and it's just like a gift. It's amazing. I think if we do this often enough, we will be given evidence, more evidence to share, but it's their agenda, not ours.
In 1999 I had an interesting experience. I was in the crop circle area, and my friend Mira is her name. She said that she managed to get in contact with her friends somewhere out there, and they said few things to her, that there would be a UFO on the sky around 11 p.m. that night, and there would be a new crop circle, very likely, and there were 4 possible locations for these new crop circles to appear, but it hadn't been decided yet which of these locations, if any, would be picked. Unfortunately, the predicted UFO sighting occurred while we were driving, and we didn't have visibility to the sky, but many other people saw it, and it indeed happened around 11 p.m. like Mira said.
I was with Ed Sherwood and Stephen Greer in a crop circle at Tawsmead Copse east field, Alton Barnes, and these balls of light were over the copse and kind of moving, very curiously moving.
Yeah.
And when I put my attention and others on the light, it was in us, and the lights seemed to be intelligent beings without will. They have no will. We have will. So as we ask, or say, think that the light could go up, it went up. To go down, it would go down. Our will was linked to its mind, and it was very benevolent.
During the night there were 4 separate glowing lights, very faint, just barely visible to the bare eye. Red color, kind of ellipse-shaped glows, very close to the horizon in 4 different places. Not above any city lights. We could see where there was some village lights, and these red lights were not a reflection of these village lights. As the morning started to approach and it started getting a bit lighter with the dawn, then these red glows started to fade away apart from one of them, and this one grew brighter instead of going fainter like the others. And again, it was not in the direction of the sunrise, but indeed the next morning a new crop circle was discovered very close to Woodborough Hill, and that was in East Kennet, and that was the only crop circle that was discovered that day in England. This crop circle was a rectangular fractal shape. The way the crop was laid caused the illusion that it was three-dimensional, like a pyramid shape rising out of the ground, and having this large pyramid in the middle, and then the smaller ones in the corners, and then again smaller ones in their corners, a typical fractal shape.
We all agreed upon the shape. It took a couple of minutes. Somebody wanted something else, and we said, no, we got to keep it simple. You have to visualize it in your mind, and you want to project it outward to whatever. I think one of the persons said, well, what about 3 circles? And then another person said, well, what about the 3 circles in equilateral triangle connected by lines? So the circles were at the apices of the triangular shape. That's kind of a universal shape. It's easy to see in your mind's eye. It's not too complex. So we visualized this for about 20 minutes in meditation. And several of the people are very advanced meditators. So they go into kind of a samadhi state pretty quickly. And so we felt our visualization was effective. We projected it out, and the next morning it was in the field.
It has a sort of hidden watermark, which I call it. It's a perfect 3-dimensional fractal hexagram. First I found out if I put 2 faces close to each other, it also fits to the structures before, and several more things. It tells the core riddle of our physical universe, because what Kepler called stellar octangula, he found also a lot of things, and I call the 3D fractal hexagram is in fact the main structure of this energetic grid behind the physical universe, from microcosmic to the most immense macrocosmic structures. And the crop circles are using these geometric structures also on the physical level. They show us, in fact, these hidden structures. For me, the most amazing thing was if you go to the center of this rectangle and connect it with the center of the disk, you get a line. If you mirror this line, you get the exact slope angle of the Great Pyramid. This was for me the most fascinating thing. By studying these Egyptian-looking crop circles, we found a lot of main functions of the pyramid. It sounds barely believable, but we have so much proof from different sides which support each other that it's a fact. This wisdom is coming from the peak of this culture, about which Egyptology nearly knows nothing. And with the knowledge, which is partly hidden within the crop circles and has to do with the research I have done 25 years ago, it has to do with sunspots and different other things. With this knowledge, it is possible to switch on the energetic grid, which in fact is the important thing behind the physical pyramid.
This is a very unusual period of time. I don't think we've been here before, in so much as this, we haven't been through this situation before. I think what we are producing that is artificial in our natural world is creating new effects. And we are going to have to live through newly generated problems that the planet has never been through before.
Virtually all walks of life, you can look at computer technology and just, in the last 5 years, 10 years, let alone 50 years, how far it's come. And I mean, the computer in my mobile phone is probably more advanced than the computers that put man on the moon back in the 60s.
Well, this very, very quick, accumulating faster and faster shifts in the manifestation of certain phenomena. I mean, the whole UFO thing, the whole people's spiritual stroke alien experiences, the Mayan calendar, all these things are coming together in a way which I feel is indicative of a deeper change.
We are living a crucial time which our mind and our intellect gives us the power to do something about it. Either to do something about it and change it for the future and gives us a future, or we simply will make the wrong decisions and destroy ourselves. I think it's that serious. I really think it's that serious. Yeah. Everything points to it. All of the science points to it. When you look at the ice cores now, which have been recently looked at, going back 500,000 years, and in the top 30 years, which are the top few centimeters of the ice core, the highest levels of CO2 ever recorded.
Now the Mayans have a prophecy that there will be a new sun in the time of the change, which is the time supposedly we are currently living. Particularly last summer, there was lots of attention, and last September, October, November 2003, attention to this particularly powerful bursts from the sun that suggested there's something unusual going on in the sun, not just the normal variations in sunspot activity. Some scientists now discuss the possibility that the greenhouse effect, the change of the temperature on Earth that is rising, might not be caused by the greenhouse effect after all, but actually because of the changes in the sun, that the radiation of the sun is really intensifying so that it is rising the temperature and also exposing us with the higher levels of ultraviolet light and maybe some other forms of radiation.
By regulating specific grid patterns around the pyramid, but far into space, it is possible to change several frequencies of parts of this grid patterns for special reasons. Different, so for example, for anti-gravity functions or sort of DNA rejuvenation. It also has to do with the water molecule, but we decided we will tell a bit about our finding to be taken seriously. And this is the good news. And the bad news is we don't yet reveal the details because we challenge our society. We demand that society shows its appreciation of the extraordinary gifts we get in the fields. We demand from our mass media to change its policy, not only to tell nonsense. We demand from our cultural society not to look at this phenomenon as childish graffitis. In fact, we want that society as a whole shows its appreciation by helping to manifest the world's first crop circle museum.
Our technology right now is based on combustion engines and fossil fuels and other even more dangerous forms of energy. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't need to use those forms of energy? We could basically tap into the earth directly, maybe like Nikola Tesla was doing, and we somehow do it through crops. And that's why I'm excited about this whole area of research, because I think that it's going to lead to breakthroughs.
If you're on road and you want to go across the mountains, you've got a finite constraint. If the car has got maximum 100 miles an hour or whatever, and you can go up and down bends, or you can only turn corners at a certain speed, it will take you X amount of time to get there. But if you can actually step out of our dimension, as it were, and go into the third dimension, which is effectively getting into a plane or a helicopter, you can effectively bypass that. Now, you're not actually breaking any laws of physics or whatever, you're just going a different method. If you take the analogy as one step further, if you could step out of our sort of 3D space-time and go into the fourth dimension, you could effectively go faster than what we perceive as our speed of light, but it's not actually breaking the laws of physics on a universal scale. So I think you can possibly utilise these energy lines or stargates or whatever, and possibly travel great distances.
We could study caravans, but unless we give it all of our energy and our passion, our faith, our spirituality, it will simply continue to be a caravan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's when we give it more than that, we begin to learn more about the natural world, which is there to be learned.
So it's not really just about crop circles. All this fits.
Exactly right.
It's something beyond classical science. Again, I think it's a future science, subtle energy science. Natural magic, subtle energy science, it's somewhere in between. If you've studied any of these areas of paranormal phenomena, they're not easy to repeat, but sometimes you can get repetitive evidence which shows there's something really going on. And to me, that's really the most interesting thing.
The only problem is our society is not ripe for it. So we have to change the evolution of our society. In fact, there must be an advanced critical mass and the whole society changes.
I think we are reaching a 100th monkey kind of point. A point where everybody's going to say, well, hey, it's not just science fiction. Besides, I saw some stuff, and my granddad told me about some stuff, and my grandmother could heal me by talking, and they'll begin to put it all together and realize they're living in a magical world. It's not just mechanical. We're in a kind of a tyranny of mechanics. But the rush for great technology, I love it too, but you got that subtle stuff doesn't work with this technology.
Just now, the most important reason for crop circles is that they stop the people to think about the situation of the world. I feel that when we are a part of Western civilization where people are always busy and they must be more and more effective in their work, it's very, very important that people just stop.
A simple circle in a field of our food caused us to wonder what we were looking at.
Yeah.
And the fact that we did that, and many others have done the same, is we've come to examine ourselves. We've come more to examine ourselves, in a way, than the crop circles.
So it's put down conduit closing. It's almost as if, well, this is the final message. If you don't get it this time, then, basically this is the message and deal with it. Sort yourselves out and learn what's going on, or learn to live with each other or whatever.
We can go out privately or in a small trusted group anywhere in the world and make contact. If you're sincere and you drop your games and you don't have weapons and you don't have cameras, you don't need a priest to go through or a rabbi. You don't need it. You can do it yourself. I mean, that's who we are.
Everyone was right in the sense who was participating in this early research. It's not that it's this or that, one thing or the other. It's a blend of things. There is a natural phenomenon, and there are people who are making the designs. They're all real in the sense they all create real effects. I mean, to me, if it can destroy my batteries, it's real. Yeah. That to me is the definition of real. Case closed.
It remains a mystery.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm delighted. I'm delighted that it remains a mystery.
Yeah, maybe that's a good point to finish.
Just think how boring life would be if we had the answer to everything. We'd get lazy.
After all, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you.
Haha, we know this is man-made. This is man-made. This is man-made.
Ha 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 ha.
They've been there before. What do they call it? Like deja vu, isn't it?
I just don't know anything he says from here on. Sorry, let me know things
Okay. These stories don't provide us scientific evidence of an extraterrestrial extraterrestrial